A man opens fire on rush hour traffic. A terrorist organization plots to overthrow the government. A member of law enforcement guns down an innocent woman. An armed bank robber strikes again and again. And a man abducts and kills a 17-year-old girl. As violent crime terrorizes the nation, the FBI must stop these criminals before they strike again.
In over 100 episodes of the FBI files, we've witnessed criminals not only terrorizing their victims with violence, but plaguing our society with fear. We look to both the experience and the courage of law enforcement to protect us and provide us with the hope that justice can and will prevail. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. In this special episode, we take a closer look at cases previously featured on this series. Our goal is to explore more fully some of the investigative methods and techniques that have made the Federal Bureau of Investigation the premier law enforcement agency in the world.
FBI Director Robert S. Mueller.
The FBI was originally established to address crime that covered cities, counties, and spread across state lines. The country needed a federal law enforcement entity to do those investigations. And over the years, as the country has grown and as the world, by the same token, has grown smaller, the FBI's mission has changed to meet the various threats.
October 1995. The Shaw family finds itself in the middle of a nightmare. 3 masked gunmen have broken into their South Carolina home. 2 hold several family members hostage, while the leader forces Amy Shaw to let him into the vault at the bank where she works as a teller. He gets away with $80,000, allowing Amy to remain unharmed. Before leaving, he calls his accomplices to tell them the job is done and that they should flee. Once their captors are gone, the Shaws call the police. Patrolling the neighborhood, police find 2 young men who they eventually take into custody. Since the gunmen were masked during the crime and left no fingerprints, police cannot tie these men to the scene. The 2 suspects give statements to the local police in which they deny taking part in the crime, but authorities doubt they are being truthful. FBI agents know they must try to get a confession. They will use interrogation techniques which require special training. Executive Assistant Director for Law Enforcement Services, Grant Ashley.
We graduate from a training school knowing a lot, but the real education starts when you get out and start working cases. That's when you learn about people, you learn to ask questions a certain way, and whether the answer is truthful or not.
Special Agent Jerry Jones chooses a suspect and begins the interrogation. Like most agents, he starts by interviewing the suspect about matters that do not pertain to the case at hand. This helps him to choose an appropriate interrogation strategy.
It just becomes instinct. While talking to these people, you are able to develop a concept of what their greatest fear is, some weakness they may have in their past or their family or something of that sort. And in this particular case, it was fear of the death penalty.
Knowing that the suspect is unaware that the teller Amy Shaw is now safe, Agent Jones sees his opportunity and decides to exploit it.
And what I told him was that my main concern was the safety and well-being of the victim teller.
I want her back alive. If your friend kills her,
had the 3rd robber killed her,
you're going to the electric chair.
they would both have faced the death penalty.
Jones knows that his choice to use this common technique must be measured. It could backfire. It may strengthen the suspect's resolve not to speak at all.
How about coming out and tell me the truth?
But the agent's plan works. Faced with the prospect of his worst fear coming true, the suspect admits his involvement in the crime and names the lead gunman, Christopher Jaburk. Police quickly arrest Jaburk at his mother's house just over the state line in Georgia. He is convicted on all charges. But Jaburk's crime spree has just begun. Before he can be sentenced, he escapes from jail with a bank robber named Jerome Frierson Bay. Authorities immediately lock down the area. Despite a massive manhunt, they find no sign of the two escapees. Agent Jones knows that when tracking a fugitive, personal information provides important clues as to where the fugitive may go or what he may do next. During several interviews prior to trial, Jones senses a special bond in Jaburk's life, giving him an idea.
It became evident to me the only real thing in the world that he cared about was his mother. I was convinced that at some point in time, he would come back to the mother. We established 24-hour surveillance.
But Jaburk doesn't show. Agents track numerous bank robberies committed by the two fugitives as they move up the East Coast. In New Jersey, authorities finally locate and apprehend Frierson Bay. Agents are disappointed Jaburk is no longer with them. But Agent Jones has a hunch.
I always believed that Jaburk would come back home.
The fugitive is located in Atlanta, staying under a false name. Jaburk is arrested without incident, returned to jail, and later sentenced to life in prison.
Over the years, you just develop an expertise where you can sense things about a person and his family relationships and things like that.
Agent Jones' individual instinct and experience were critical to bringing this case to a close. Sometimes it takes the efforts of an entire team to bring criminals to justice. Seattle, 1992. A gun-wielding man commits a string of daring bank robberies, threatening to kill anyone who gets in his way. Agents named the thief Hollywood for his use of theatrical makeup and disguises in his heists. Over the next 3 years, the gunman robs 12 banks, taking nearly $1 million and leaving behind a few clues. To take down this elusive criminal, the Seattle police and the FBI must join several other law enforcement agencies in a unique investigative environment known as a task force. Executive Assistant Director Grant Ashley.
We bring together the resources of our state and local partners with the FBI and some of our federal partners so that we can get the unique skills and abilities of these agencies focused on a particular threat to get the maximum results.
But local law enforcement and federal agents do not always see eye to eye. FBI officials named Special Agent Ellen Glasser as the supervisor of the Puget Sound Task Force.
We had about a dozen different agencies, all of whom came with different missions, different intentions, and it was very interesting because we have different philosophies of how we do things, we have different policies, so it was very challenging to have everybody work together for the common good.
Seattle Police Detective Mike Megan is also a member of the task force.
I looked at it myself as being a guest in the FBI's house. You know, there was a lot of respect given to them, but there was hurdles to be broken down, you know, the preformed opinions or judging a book by its cover. We had to put things aside, such as egos and attitudes, and who is going to always take the lead, and who is going to be the point man, and you know, are the officers going to play second fiddle? And we had to come to an understanding.
The task force cannot expect to accomplish their mission if they cannot work as a team.
We had to work on communications between task force members every day. They were very strong-willed people that were on the task force. And my philosophy has always been that if you put relationships first and work on relationships with people, working together, then the mission will take care of itself.
With this philosophy, Glasser brings cohesion to the group. The task force is now working as one. Together, they determine the pattern and frequency of Hollywood's crimes, so they will be prepared to react quickly the next time he strikes. The effort pays off. On November 27, 1996, Hollywood is the prime suspect in an armed bank robbery. Through the combined efforts of the task force, police locate and corner him in a camper. Tragically, he ends his own life with a single shot to the head.
Even though people brought different experiences and different expertise to the task force, they were all able to blend and work extremely effectively together.
FBI field agents often receive the glory for solving cases. But the highly skilled technicians at the FBI crime lab in Quantico, Virginia, deserve much of the credit. They are more than scientists in lab coats. They are creative detectives whose tireless work will often decide whether or not a case is resolved. Dr. Dwight Adams is the assistant director in charge of the lab.
I knew I wanted to be a part of the FBI laboratory because it is a world-class facility. And you can look in the eyes of any individual in this building and you will see people who are very dedicated to performing at the very highest levels. And our only interest is in providing the truth, providing the most accurate, reliable, and unassailable results that we can.
January 11th, 1982. California Highway Patrol Officer George Gwaltney calls in a possible suicide off Interstate 15 near Barstow. When backup officers arrive, they find 23-year-old Robin Bishop dead from a single gunshot wound to the head. Police cannot find a gun at the scene, but they do find handcuff marks on the young woman's wrists. Clearly, this was no suicide. This was murder. In 1982, California Highway Patrol Officer George Gwaltney reports the discovery of a suicide victim on the side of the road. But since the victim was shot in the back of the head, investigators on the scene conclude that it was murder. The victim's driver's license and registration are visible, as if they had been taken out for some reason. To rule out the possibility that a police officer killed the young woman, the lead investigator orders all area officers to hand in their service weapons for ballistics comparisons. One officer fails to do so, George Gwaltney, who insists his gun has been stolen. Gwaltney becomes a suspect when investigators find the dismantled frame of his police-issued .357 in his truck. Someone has removed the barrel, the one piece that through ballistics testing can forensically tie the gun to the bullet that killed Robin Bishop. Police also find a box of ammunition in Gwaltney's bedroom closet. It is the same brand of bullet that killed Robin. In late 1982, the state of California charges George Gwaltney with murder, but a deadlocked jury results in a mistrial. A second trial in Superior Court also ends in deadlock. Investigators are convinced Gwaltney is guilty, but they can no longer charge him at the state level. They look to federal authorities for help. Special Agent Michael Randolph reviews the case and recognizes that Gwaltney is so cunning, prosecuting him will be difficult, if not impossible. Getting a conviction will take extraordinary tenacity from both the agents in the field and from the specialized examiners at the FBI's crime lab. Executive Assistant Director Grant Ashley.
Technology has been a great tool But what still is the most important aspect for the FBI is the human side.
FBI examiner Jim Cadigan from the lab's Firearms and Tool Marks unit tries to find a link between the evidence and the suspect. Normally, he would compare the striations in the murder weapon's barrel to those on the fatal bullet. But the barrel is missing. Cadigan will need to think outside the box to find another way to the truth. He knows that investigators had confiscated vice grips and wrenches when they found the revolver's frame.
The question was, could one of these tools have been used to hold the frame while the barrel of the firearm was being removed?
Cadigan decides to use a technique known as tool mark analysis. He notices a small impression on the gun frame, then checks each of Gwaltney's tools until he finds a pipe wrench with a broken tooth.
And that looked very similar to the mark that was on the frame. So using that as a pivot point, I started making impressions with that tool, and comparing those impressions under a microscope, I was able to come to the conclusion that that particular tool was used to the exclusion of any other tool to make the marks that were found on the frame.
Although this points to Gwaltney as having removed the barrel of his gun, it is not enough to prove he killed Robin Bishop. Investigators will have a case if they can find a link between the fatal bullet and the box of ammunition from Gwaltney's closet. In an unprecedented move, the lab decides to employ a new technique they've been developing, which matches the molecular content of the bullets. FBI Special Agent Michael Randolph.
When a manufacturer of lead like Remington Arms makes a batch of lead, they throw things in much as you would when you're making meatloaf. That makes each batch of lead unique.
In the FBI's very first nuclear ballistics examination, scientists place a fragment of one of Gwaltney's bullets in a nuclear reactor, where it absorbs neutrons and becomes radioactive. When measured, the radioactivity reveals the precise amount of each element in the lead, an atomic fingerprint. Examiners then repeat the process with a piece of the fatal bullet.
And lo and behold, we find approximately 27 rounds that are the exact match as the lead taken from the head of our victim.
In January of 1984, George Gwaltney goes on trial, this time in federal court. Gwaltney is found guilty and sentenced to 90 years in prison. 12 years later, George Gwaltney died in prison of a heart attack. Executive Assistant Director for Law Enforcement Services, Grant Ashley.
There's the unsung heroes that you never hear of, the people sitting back in the laboratory that make sense of this. This takes an awful lot of time, and it takes extraordinarily talented, patient people.
Proving a case using hard scientific evidence is an essential tool of every law enforcement agency. But when authorities have no clear suspects and very little physical evidence, the FBI must rely on one of their most unique and least understood disciplines, profiling. May 31st, 1985. On a lonely road in Lexington, South Carolina, 17-year-old Sherry Faye Smith checks her mailbox before disappearing without a trace.
Sherry!
2 days of fruitless searching leads investigators to conclude that she has been abducted. Early the next morning, their fears are realized when the missing girl's family receives a call from the kidnapper. He explains they will eventually get their daughter back and tells them that they will receive a letter later that day. When the letter finally arrives, the family is horrified. Written in Sherry's handwriting, the document is entitled Last Will and Testament. In South Carolina, a young woman has been abducted. Her life is on the line, and investigators have no idea who the suspect is. In an effort to identify what sort of man would have kidnapped Sherry Faye, investigators call upon FBI profilers at the Investigative Support Unit in Quantico, Virginia. Profilers are veteran agents who receive specialized training in criminology and applied psychology. Retired FBI Special Agent John Douglas advanced the art of behavioral profiling for the FBI. For over a decade, he and others conducted interviews with convicted killers, arsonists, rapists, and kidnappers in various prisons around the country.
I tapped through that memory of theirs that no one has ever tapped into before when they were perpetrating the crime. It takes time, but once I'm in there, I get tremendous information.
Douglas and others cataloged and categorized their findings, creating a statistical database from which profilers can draw inferences about criminals based on patterns of behavior.
I'm very much like a doctorate in medicine, where I'm trying to come up with a diagnosis, and I'm going to rely on the thousands of cases that I've worked. I'm going to rely on the hundreds and hundreds of interviews of offenders who committed similar types of crimes.
When creating a profile, Douglas needs to review all investigative materials, including preliminary police reports and crime scene photographs.
You really need to have all the information relative to the victim. You have to do an analysis, a profile of the victim. You ask yourself the question, why was this victim the victim of this crime? And then you look at the way the crime was perpetrated, the low-risk crime or high-risk crime. When someone asks you a profile, what they're looking for are physical and behavioral characteristics, which includes age, race, sometimes body typing, educational level, occupational type. Sometimes it may include right down to the type of vehicle the person will be driving, may include the overall behavior of the subject, whether or not he's very, very rigid, obsessive compulsive on one extreme, to being very, very sloppy and careless on the other. And so it can include sometimes as many as 100 characteristics in the overall profile.
At the request of South Carolina authorities, Douglas turns his attention to the Shari Faye Smith case and reviews all the case materials.
What made the case unique was that we have a subject who's communicating with the family, which is very, very rare, very, very unusual. I felt good about it because when you have a communique, whether it's a written communique or a verbal communique, you can do an analysis of that, and it begins to paint a pretty nice picture of the type of person we should be looking for. It was as if he followed a script that was written out beforehand. Here is someone who will be very, very rigid, very, very orderly, very, very tight.
After scrutinizing every detail of the abduction, Douglas generates a 22-point profile. The subject is likely a male with a prior criminal record and lives locally.
The nature of the criminal beast is that they will perpetrate crimes and they will, as well as dispose of crimes in areas where there's some type of familiarity.
Douglas also believes the abductor has feelings of inadequacy and compensates for that through violent actions.
He feels like nothing. He feels like a nobody. And how can this nobody, this personality, this person who's probably overweight, low self-esteem, unattractive, how can he become a somebody? He'll go after victims that there was no chance that he would ever come in contact with someone like a Shari Faye Smith. And so for the first time in their life, they can be powerful.
2 days after the kidnapper's last communication, he calls the family with specific directions to where they can find their daughter.
Listen carefully. Take Highway 378 west to Traffic Circle. Turn left at White Frame Building. Go to backyard. 6 feet beyond, we're waiting. God chose us.
Investigators race to the location, hoping to find the young girl alive. When they arrive, their worst fears are confirmed. Shari Faye Smith is dead. The body, having been exposed to the extreme heat and elements for several days, is so decomposed it makes determining the exact cause and time of death impossible. To the profiler, the detailed directions to Shari's body, as well as the condition of the crime scene, provides further insight into the suspect's mind.
He told me that he had been out to that crime scene on several different occasions because he was very specific as to the number of miles and tenths of miles and number of feet where she can be found. It also told me that he had some criminal sophistication, because I believe what he did is he waited for her to go into advanced stages of decomposition, which would make it more difficult for law enforcement to determine cause and method of death.
On the evening of Sherry's funeral, the killer calls again and asks to speak to her sister, Dawn.
Hello? This thing got out of hand, and all I wanted to do was make love to Dawn. I've been watching her for a couple of weeks.
To who? In a chilling moment, the killer uses Dawn's name in place of Sherry's. Investigators brace themselves for the possibility that this killer may be turning his murderous obsession towards Dawn. South Carolina investigators are searching for the man who murdered 17-year-old Sherry Faye Smith. FBI profiler John Douglas assists the investigation by providing a profile of the suspect. After 2 weeks spent underground, the killer resurfaces. In a bold move, he snatches 9-year-old Deborah Mae Helmet from her front yard in plain view of another child. For profiler John Douglas, the killer's shift to a riskier crime is a sign that he is under duress.
The crime does not reflect distress at that time. However, what happens when you start putting it together from experience of other cases, i.e. the Ted Bundy case, kills women at the Chi Omega house, and then he goes after a young child. He's totally starting to break down under the stress of being under the scrutiny of law enforcement trying to hunt him down.
After kidnapping Sherry Faye Smith, the killer had repeatedly called the family. But this time, he remained silent. Douglas must devise a plan to draw him out. He knows that killers will often follow their crimes in the media. So he decides to organize a memorial service that he knows will be reported in the newspapers. He hopes this will rekindle the killer's fascination with Sherry Faye's sister, Dawn. The kidnapper takes the bait and makes a call to Dawn.
You can't be protected all the time. Okay, God wants you to join Sherry Faye. It's just a matter of time.
Then, before hanging up, the killer gives Dawn a series of directions.
Okay, listen carefully. Go 1 north, turn right. Deborah Mae is waiting. God forgive us all.
Investigators follow the directions. There, they find the body of 9-year-old Deborah Mae Helmick. Douglas suspects the killer will likely try to abduct Dawn. Meanwhile, forensic scientists use a process known as electrostatic detection to read invisible indentations on Sherry Faye's last will and testament. The information leads investigators to a suspect, Larry Gene Bell, a local blue-collar worker. Police interview people who know Bell. In learning about him, investigators find that he matches Douglas's profile exactly. Authorities arrest Bell. Forensic evidence and Douglas's profile help convict Bell of both murders. He is executed on October 4th, 1996. In this case, Douglas was instrumental in identifying an unknown killer. Profilers can also confirm suspicions about known suspects. In 1983, Alaska state troopers are investigating the state's first serial killer. Dozens of women, mostly exotic dancers and prostitutes, have disappeared. Many are never seen again, but some turn up in shallow graves with .223 caliber shell casings nearby. The state troopers have a suspect, a local family man, Robert Hansen. A year earlier, a prostitute had told the local Anchorage police that she had been abducted and tortured by Hansen before she was able to escape. Anchorage police officers interviewed Hansen's friends, confirming his alibi. They searched his house and car, but found no evidence and suspended the investigation. Investigators felt that Hansen, who owns a local bakery, was too unlikely a suspect. But when the state troopers learn of the prostitute's report, they believe he may be the serial killer they are searching for. Investigators contact FBI Special Agent John Douglas for help.
And this wasn't really to do a profile. Here they have a suspect, so what you do is you do a personality assessment of this individual and some of the circumstances around him to see whether or not this person has the capability, the capacity, the propensity for violence.
The fact that the killer had murdered so many meant to Douglas that he has the means to function unnoticed in the community, someone who works independently. Since the bodies were recovered in remote areas of wilderness, the killer could possibly be an avid outdoorsman. Hansen fits the profile. He is both a small business owner and a recreational hunter. Since he preyed on prostitutes and exotic dancers, Douglas concludes the killer would have low self-esteem and had probably grown up feeling like an outcast.
Hansen was unattractive. His face was all pockmarked, had a speech impediment, which probably caused him a lot of problems as a kid growing up.
After reviewing all the case materials, Douglas concludes that Hansen was indeed capable of murder. If investigators are to prove Hansen's guilt, they'll need physical evidence. To obtain a search warrant for Hansen's home, they'll have to convince a judge of what they will find there.
You want us to ask a question first?
The profiler's role now switches from confirming suspicions about a suspect to helping investigators develop a search warrant. Authorities know they need to look for the gun that left the .223 caliber shell casings found near the bodies. They ask Douglas if there is anything else to list in the warrant.
We're dealing here with a serial killer. It starts off as fantasy. And one of the things to keep the fantasy going after the crime is they take some type of a memento. We call them either souvenirs or trophies, something belonging to the victims. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. It could be a cheap watch or costume jewelry. And what they'll do is that they'll keep this. They're not going to keep this out in open view. They're going to secrete this in places within the house, under a crawl space if they have it, or up in the attic under installation.
Douglas helps prosecutors write the affidavit, which swells to 48 pages. A judge approves the warrant. During the search of Hansen's house, investigators find the trophies Douglas suggested would be there, including the business cards of some of the victims. They also find several weapons. Among them is a .223 Ruger rifle. Ballistics testing proves it is the gun that fired the shells found near several of the crime scenes. Confronted with all the evidence, Hansen finally breaks. He confesses to murdering 4 women and is sentenced to 461 years with no chance of parole. While a profiler provides a psychological picture of a criminal, agents in the field use their instincts, experience, and deductive reasoning to get inside the mind of a suspect to uncover motive. On the morning of January 25th, 1993, a lone gunman opens fire in front of CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, killing 2 CIA employees and injuring several others. In 1993, a gunman unleashes his fury with an AK-47 outside CIA headquarters, killing 2 and wounding others in a hail of gunfire. FBI Special Agent Brad Garrett arrives on the scene and attempts to piece together a motive for the attack.
The first thing you do when you walk into a crime scene is, what's the obvious? Well, the obvious is this appears to be directed towards the CIA. It might be directed towards the individuals that were shot. But it was clearly somebody wanted to make a public statement during a rush hour traffic. So that sort of gives you a shell at least to start from. In any case you investigate, you always look for a link between the victim and the subject, because if you have a link, it tends to make it a lot easier in solving the case versus strangers who commit crimes against other individuals. But once we started looking at the backgrounds of the individuals that were shot, and we looked at the circumstances as to why they were at that intersection, It didn't appear, at least to me, that there probably was a link between those particular individuals being shot and the person that shot them. So we immediately started looking at who within the CIA, in other words, disgruntled employees, present employees, that may have had a relationship with these people that could have retaliated for whatever reason. But after spending some time doing that, there was really nothing in there that jumped at us either. So I said, where do we go from here? Well, you start looking at the logical things. You have a description of an individual who did this shooting, brought an assault rifle up to shoulder and started shooting down range. And so you're looking for somebody that appears to have a real issue with the CIA.
By cross-referencing the killer's physical description with a database of recent purchases of AK-47s, investigators identify a suspect. He is 28-year-old Mir Amal Kanzi, a Pakistani immigrant. Garrett's initial assessment of motive is confirmed during interviews with people who know Kanzi, including his roommate. They reveal that he was becoming enraged by U.S. foreign policy and was planning something sinister against the CIA, White House, or the Israeli embassy. Unfortunately, Kanzi has fled to either Pakistan or Afghanistan. To bring the fugitive back to the United States for trial, Garrett must utilize what is arguably an agent's most important skill: his ability to anticipate obstacles and to devise ways around them. After 4.5 years of pursuit, Agent Garrett receives information that Kanzi is hiding in a Pakistani hotel. But when they apprehend him, there is a problem.
One of the fears I had when we went in the room and looked at him is that he didn't look like his picture. He gained weight, he had a beard, and so I looked at the other 3 agents and I said, you know, I'm not sure if this is the right guy.
Agent Garrett must be absolutely positive. Without properly identifying the suspect, he cannot bring him back to the United States.
I did not want to leave that room without being convinced in my own mind that the individual that was handcuffed on the bed was, in fact, Mir Amal Kanzi.
The only way for Agent Garrett to make a positive ID is through fingerprint analysis. Typically the job of highly skilled lab specialists who are thousands of miles away in Washington. Fortunately, Agent Garrett had thought ahead.
I went to FBI headquarters to the latent fingerprint section and worked with one of the experienced latent fingerprint examiners who actually took the 10 fingerprints of Mr. Kanzi. Then we actually studied them over several days and learned all the unique characteristics so that I would be able to identify him by fingerprints once we found him.
Beautiful world. Yeah.
Now Garrett must put that training to use.
He was handcuffed, face down on the bed, and I took a fingerprint ink pad and hit his thumb with the ink. Then I took a white piece of paper and then hit his thumb onto the white piece of paper, so then I hit his thumbprint. I got on the floor of the hotel with a flashlight, a magnifying glass, and his prints.
It's a match. Thanks to Agent Garrett's foresight, he can now bring a suspected terrorist back to the United States for prosecution. Mir Amal Kanzi is found guilty of murder, malicious shooting, and using a firearm in the commission of a felony. He is sentenced to death and is executed in 2002. Special Agent Brad Garrett's unique training and experience helped him close this case. But sometimes an agent's greatest asset is his ability to adapt to new situations and think on his feet. Executive Assistant Director Grant Ashley.
These are people that want to win. They aren't here just to get a paycheck.
1985. In the hills of Arkansas, an army of extremists plot to overthrow the U.S. government. They spread a doctrine of hate, murder, and genocide, launching death raids on churches and synagogues. Federal agents must dismantle this heavily armed militia without igniting a bloody war. The FBI follows a trail to the compound of the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord, or CSA, a violent group of white supremacists. The compound is heavily fortified, and the men inside are armed with grenades, dozens of automatic weapons, and even a powerful anti-tank rocket. Investigators need to serve arrest and search warrants. But unlike most circumstances where a SWAT team would be utilized, this situation is more delicate. Reports confirm that innocent women and children are inside the compound. With hundreds of lives in the balance, there can be no margin for error. Authorities working the case do not have the expertise or manpower to take on the CSA. And the U.S. Constitution bars the military from aiding in a civil investigation. The FBI decides to send a highly trained tactical group called the Hostage Rescue Team, or HRT, the Bureau's equivalent of the Army's Delta Force. The HRT acts as a counterterrorism unit within the borders of the United States. In 1985, Special Agent Danny Coulson is the commander of the HRT.
The HRT basically are assaulters. It's their job to go into a crisis point and neutralize terrorists and rescue hostages. But this was not that type of situation. These people were very well armed. They were very formidable. And we wanted to avoid a shootout.
To serve the arrest and search warrants safely, Coulson needs to adapt to the circumstances. With their traditional method of attack out of the question, they devise a different approach.
The very reputation of the FBI was dependent upon this case, and we believe that without any doubt the best way to do this was to surreptitiously set a perimeter, which would be very dangerous and difficult, but certainly less dangerous and difficult than doing an assault on that compound.
During the first phase of the operation, reconnaissance teams penetrate the compound's perimeter in the dead of night. Using handheld and airplane-based sensors, they avoid roaming CSA patrols. After 10 days of scouting, an HRT sniper team reports a CSA patrol is about to unwittingly stumble across their position. As team leader, Coulson must make a split-second decision that could affect the lives of hundreds of people. In 1985, the FBI is closing in on the CSA, a right-wing paramilitary organization based in Arkansas. Over 200 agents secretly surround their compound. FBI snipers report a CSA patrol is about to discover them. FBI hostage rescue team leader Danny Coulson must act quickly. He knows if he makes the wrong move, a bloody war could ensue. His decision is surprisingly bold.
I said, you hail them, you yell at them and tell them you're the FBI and tell them to go back inside. And everybody kind of looked at me like, ooh, why don't we grab these two guys? And I didn't want to do that.
Coulson's tactic is calculated for maximum effectiveness.
I wanted to scare the daylights out of these guys. But I also wanted them to understand that if I gave them an order, they had to follow it. I wanted them to get in the habit of following my orders or the orders of my team. And secondly, to show them that we weren't there to hurt them.
The sniper alerts the roaming patrol and orders them back inside. They comply. But now the CSA knows the FBI is outside their compound. The standoff begins. Now someone must negotiate the surrender of the CSA's leader.
Well, the HRT doesn't have a negotiating element, but they work very closely with the behavioral science group at Quantico.
The FBI tries to determine the most effective way to deal with the CSA leader, who they suspect will be unwilling to speak with a negotiator.
He would only talk to the HRT commander. It would be commander to commander or general to general. The FBI's policy on negotiations has always been that leaders never negotiate. The leader of the HRT, a on-scene commander, never, ever, ever negotiates. To have the leader negotiates takes away some of your techniques. You can't stall for time. You can't play good guy and bad guy between the negotiator and the commander.
Nevertheless, the FBI decides they want Coulson to take on the role of negotiator, since that is their only option.
I wasn't comfortable with that. I'm a tactical person. I had been a sniper, and I'd been a SWAT team member and a SWAT team leader and trained as an operator. And I was not trained to be a negotiator. And I didn't know that I could pull that off. I'd much more comfortable going in after the guy than trying to talk him out. But they were adamant that it had to be done like that.
Through his experience in observing negotiations and some quick on-site training, Colson is able to adapt to his new position. The CSA leader makes first contact when he calls the FBI's command post and speaks with Agent Colson.
We talked on the phone for a few minutes about things we wanted to do. He offered to me that he'd be allowed to come out because he wanted to personally talk to me and see me, but he also be allowed to go back in, which I agreed to, which was total departure from FBI policy. And we made a quick contact with FBI headquarters because I was getting ready to violate FBI policy by having a badly wanted fugitive, a terrorist, in my hands, essentially, and then let him leave. And went up then with the assistant director of the criminal division. In a word, he approved it, said, yes, do it.
After a series of face-to-face meetings, the CSA leader emerges from the compound. He tells Colson that while he and many of his followers are ready to surrender, there are those who wish to fight, and he cannot control them.
And he said to me, I need help. He said, there's a man that's our spiritual leader, and I need his advice, and I need his help to convince people that's the thing to do, come out. And I said, who is this? He said, it's Robert Millar. This, again, is something totally against FBI policy, to bring in a Confederate into a crisis situation, not just to negotiate, but to go inside. That's never been done in the history of the FBI. They'd never allowed that to happen, to allow a third-party individual who was sympathetic to the people we were dealing with to go inside to be a part of the negotiation whether or not they came out. This is a huge risk, and I thought it was worth taking.
Colson gets approval to allow Mr. Millar to negotiate with CSA members.
Nice to see you again.
He remains inside the compound for nearly 24 hours. The next morning, day 4 of the siege, Millar and the CSA leadership finally emerge.
They came out and they said, we have an agreement that we will surrender. We will come out and we'll give up our arms and walk out peacefully.
As commander of HRT, Colson receives the news with guarded optimism.
You're constantly thinking about the worst case scenario. Even good things have to be looked at with some suspicion. Was it a diversion to get out the backside and start a firefight? So we had to be very careful.
Colson gives the leader 15 minutes to gather his people and bring them out.
And very shortly after, I get a communication from a sniper team that they're coming. They're coming out. The snipers report that they're in civilian attire. There's no camis, there's no battle gear, there's no weapons they can see.
Miraculously, the HRT accomplishes its mission without a single shot fired.
It was an ending that we had all prayed for, and one that we were very fortunate that we had.
If not for Agent Colson's quick thinking and ability to adapt in tense situations, the standoff would likely have had a much bloodier conclusion.
It shows what the FBI can do in a major crisis situation. It shows the number of different disciplines it has at its disposal, how they can bring unlimited resources on the focus of a problem. It's a great big machine. It grinds you up if you're a bad guy, and it's what happened here. This wasn't an HRT story. It's an FBI story.
We have seen just a few of the many ways in which the FBI works to solve cases. With each new investigative challenge they face, we can rest assured that the Bureau will dedicate itself to doing whatever it takes to protect the American public.
When a young woman vanished, family and friends discovered her secret life. The political appointee carried on an illicit affair with a wealthy, married man. Investigators suspected that her ex-lover was responsible, but they had little physical evidence to support their theory. In order to bring him to justice, the FBI would have to go undercover and turn brother. against brother.
Power is a responsibility as well as a privilege. But in the wrong hands, power can corrupt. This is especially true in the legal community. For former Deputy Attorney General for the state of Delaware, losing sight of his sworn oath to uphold justice would prove lethal. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. When a prominent attorney tried to put himself above the law, it was up to the FBI to prove that justice is blind.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, June 27, 1996. At the upscale Panorama restaurant, prominent Delaware attorney Thomas Capano, separated from his wife, dined with his mistress Anne Marie Fahey, the appointment secretary to the Delaware governor.
Back next week, we'll be out and look how good we work together.
Despite the candlelight and wine, her mood was grim. Anne Marie told Capano she wanted to end their relationship. Capano was furious with her decision. After dinner, Capano drove Anne Marie to the Wilmington, Delaware house he rented since leaving his wife. He insisted she come inside to continue the conversation. He didn't want their affair to end. Two nights later, Anne Marie failed to show up for a dinner party with her sister Kathleen. Concerned, Kathleen arranged to meet the Delaware State Police at Anne Marie's flat. She explained that no one had heard from the governor's secretary since Thursday. They found unpacked perishable groceries on the kitchen counter. Kathleen called Michael Scanlon, a successful banker and Anne Marie's close friend, to see if he had seen her. He was supposed to pick her up for the dinner party, but Anne Marie never returned his calls.
This is out of character for her?
He has everything always put in its place. I just don't understand.
Anne Marie's family knew her to be neat and orderly, yet her apartment was in disarray. Shoes littered the bedroom floor alongside her purse. An expensive pantsuit remained in its gift box.
This isn't normal.
No, not at all.
A detective searched the purse. He found her wallet and ID, though her keys were missing. Detective Robert Donovan of the Wilmington Police was called to the scene and believed that Anne Marie hadn't left the apartment on her own.
From the information that they're providing, they said she's not the type of person to leave, go walking around the neighborhood, or to go somewhere without letting somebody know where she's at. Number one, typical with a female, when she goes somewhere, she takes her pocketbook, wallet, identification, something.
This is Detective Donovan.
In the bedroom, Kathleen found a packet of letters from a man named Thomas Capano. They professed his love for her. Kathleen and Scanlon were perplexed. Anne Marie had never even mentioned Capano. Though Anne Marie's sister had never heard of the man, Detective Donovan certainly had. Thomas Capano was a powerful man in the state of Delaware.
Tom Capano was extremely connected. He was, at one point, he was number 2 man for the city of Wilmington. He was head legal counsel for the governor for the state. He was very close with a number of state representatives, state senators, extremely close with some retired police chiefs for the city of Wilmington. Very influential.
The detective found Anne Marie's journal in the bedroom and flipped to the last page. The diary entry evidenced her relief at ending her love affair with Capano. It read, "I have finally brought closure to Tom Capano. What a controlling, insecure maniac."
Doesn't look like a happy relationship, though.
Not at all.
The officers paid a visit to Thomas Capano at 3:39 a.m. Separated from his wife and the father of 4 daughters, 47-year-old Capano was living in a rented house located only minutes from Anne Marie's apartment. Capano confirmed that he had a relationship with Anne Marie, but claimed that it was long over. According to him, the couple had parted as friends. He told the detectives that he had dinner with her on Thursday night in Philadelphia. Afterwards, he brought her back to his house briefly to give her a gift and some groceries she needed. Then he took her home. When asked, Capano claimed he had not seen Anne Marie since, nor was he surprised that she was missing. Capano explained that Anne Marie had Friday off. Perhaps she had decided to go away for the weekend. He described her as moody and at times suicidal. He suggested the police wait until Monday morning when she would probably show up at work.
We then asked him if she, in fact, was at his house, and if he would have a problem with us looking through his house. He stated that he would have a problem because his children were with him for the weekend and they were upstairs asleep.
On Monday, however, Anne Marie failed to show up for work. Investigators returned to her apartment building and talked to her downstairs neighbor.
Can you tell me something about what happened last night?
The neighbor had been away over the weekend, but remembered hearing a single set of footsteps in Anne Marie's apartment on Thursday evening at around 9:45.
Normally we hear high heels.
They seemed heavier than usual, possibly a man's. She heard nothing more after that night. State and local investigators checked Anne Marie's bank and credit card accounts and found no activity after June 28th. Friends and relatives reported they had not seen or heard from her since that day.
All right, here.
Apparently, Thomas Capano was the last person to have seen Anne Marie Fahey.
Take him up to the Panorama restaurant in Philadelphia and see if you can find
Investigators traveled across the Delaware border to Pennsylvania to corroborate Capano's story. They spoke to the waitress who served the couple on June 27th at about 7 p.m. She remembered the evening and recognized Thomas Capano and Anne Marie Fahey from the photos.
Yeah, that's her. She wasn't really happy.
She wasn't.
The waitress recalled that the pair seemed tense. Anne Marie said little and hardly touched her food. After she handed the bill to Capano, he passed it to Anne Marie, who signed his name on the charge slip. The waitress never overheard any of their conversation since the couple stopped talking each time she approached the table. Investigators met with several of Anne Marie's close friends who described an illicit affair that had begun almost 3 years earlier. In 1993, 27-year-old Anne Marie Fahey met Thomas Capano in the governor's office.
No, Tom Capano.
Despite her high-profile job, she was impressed by the powerful lawyer and flattered when she caught his eye. Investigators learned that while Capano showered Anne Marie with expensive gifts, he only romanced her in out-of-the-way places to avoid being seen. She felt a strong attraction to the charismatic older man, but feared her family's disapproval and kept the affair secret.
I'll be waiting for you when you go back.
As months passed, Anne Marie confided to her friends that Capano's charming exterior belied an angry and manipulative man. He understood love only in terms of control. She told her friends that she couldn't trust him. By the spring of 1996, his manipulation and anger had damaged their relationship beyond repair. Capano told Anne-Marie that he had separated from his wife so they could stop hiding.
I don't even want to talk to you about this. I don't even want to talk to you about this.
Give me more. You know how much I care.
Anne-Marie wanted out. Capano refused to let go. Detectives learned that shortly before Anne-Marie disappeared, she began seeing Michael Scanlon, who she found caring and stable. It was the relationship that she had always hoped for. The prospect of a marriage proposal seemed promising. Thomas Capano continued to pursue her. Anne-Marie told friends that Capano was stalking her. She was scared and wanted him out of her life. Capano refused to accept the rejection.
Well, Tom Capano had never been told no before. He thought that he could control everything in his life and everything in everybody else's life. Finally, somebody, Anne-Marie Fahey, stood up to him and told him, no, I've had enough, and Tom couldn't handle it.
The Fahey family posted a $10,000 reward for information relating to Anne-Marie's disappearance. Over the 4th of July weekend, hundreds of concerned citizens helped police conduct a massive search of the local park where Anne-Marie often jogged. The governor himself joined in the hunt.
Thank you for everybody who knows and loves Anne-Marie.
They found no trace of the missing secretary. The case became a federal investigation since Anne-Marie, a resident of Delaware, was last seen in Pennsylvania. Special Agent Eric Alpert of the FBI's Wilmington field office offered his help.
I contacted Robert Donovan, asked him if we could be of any assistance. He said we could. At that point, we pulled telephone records and credit card records.
With the help of the U.S. Attorney, Alpert secured credit card statements and phone records belonging to Thomas Capano and Anne-Marie Fahey. Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly noticed that Capano made a $308 purchase at Wallpaper Warehouse just 2 days after Fahey disappeared.
Thought that was odd because Tom Capano was living in a rental house, so I called the number for Wallpaper Warehouse. The person answered the phone and said air-based carpets. I turned to Bob Donovan right away, and we both had the same reaction, which was, my God, he must have rolled her up in a carpet.
Investigators now believe that Thomas Capano killed Anne-Marie Fahey, but they needed more than a hunch to convince a judge there was probable cause for a warrant to search Capano's house. In July of 1996, agents and local detectives focused on attorney Thomas Capano, who they suspected was responsible for the murder of his former mistress, Anne-Marie Fahey. 2 days after she vanished, Capano had purchased a new carpet. For Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly, it raised suspicions that Capano had concealed Anne-Marie's body in a rug and removed it from his house.
Up until that point, we had probable cause to believe that Tom Capano had played a role in the disappearance of Anne-Marie Fahey. But what we didn't have was probable cause that we'd find evidence in his house.
I really wanted to call you in to ask.
Hoping to establish probable cause in order to obtain a search warrant, investigators learned that Capano's housekeeper had cleaned his home 4 days before Anne-Marie's disappearance. She added that Capano canceled her service the following week, claiming that the house didn't need cleaning since his children hadn't stayed over. The detective quickly noted the inconsistency in Capano's story. On the night he was questioned in his home, the attorney claimed his children were upstairs asleep. 3 weeks later, the housekeeper returned to the residence and noticed something that struck her as odd. The love seat and carpet from the living room were gone. In their place sat 2 chairs and a brand new carpet. This simple observation gave Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly all he needed to move forward.
So when you combined the rug and the couch with Tom Capano's statement that he had brought Anne-Marie to his home on the evening of June 27th, and you combine that with all the other evidence we knew about their tumultuous relationship, we now were armed with probable cause to get a search warrant for his house.
Connolly and FBI agent Eric Alpert prepared an airtight 37-page search warrant for Thomas Capano's Wilmington home, serving it on July 31st, 1996. Detective Robert Donovan didn't know what they'd find, but they knew where to look.
We searched the entire residence, but we took special attention to this room, the great room area, because we believed that Anne-Marie Fahey was murdered in that room.
The team found the 2 chairs and new carpet described by the housekeeper. They moved them to see what might be hidden underneath.
Hey, careful with the furniture. Okay, you don't have to destroy the place.
The floor was clean. On the baseboard nearby, agents found something promising. Barely visible to the untrained eye, they saw 2 brown spots that appeared to be dried blood. Agents retrieved samples by swabbing the area with a mild saline solution. Investigators hoped the FBI lab in Washington, D.C. could provide stronger forensic evidence from the samples. For DNA lab examiner Alan Giusti, testing the recovered material presented a challenge.
The items themselves are not very large. The stains were actually fairly small, and because of that, we have to be careful because our test will consume part of a stain to determine if it's blood.
Giusti performed a Kastle-Meyer test. This test requires only a pinhead-sized specimen. He applied the chemical phenolphthalein, which turns pink when mixed with blood. The test worked. For Agent Eric Alpert and the team, the discovery was important.
This is very significant because at this point we had no murder weapon and had no other physical evidence in the case, so finding blood was very important to us. We needed to find whose blood that was and whether it matched Anne-Marie Fahey's blood.
It was impossible to determine whether the blood belonged to Anne-Marie without DNA samples from her or her parents. Samples from her siblings would be too disparate to provide solid results. Unfortunately, Anne-Marie's parents were deceased. Anne-Marie's brothers and sisters provided investigators with a possible lead. A check of the missing woman's calendar book revealed that she had given blood a month before she disappeared. Agents went to the blood bank to subpoena the sample. It was too late. Her blood had been reduced to plasma and shipped overseas. There was only a slim chance it could be retrieved. Worse yet, DNA-rich red and white blood cells had been removed, and extracting DNA from plasma alone is next to impossible. As the investigation slowly moved forward, Thomas Capano continued to live a life of ease. As the eldest of 4 brothers, he had always been his parents' favorite, and the son who had achieved success in all he sought. Thomas's brothers had always looked up to him. Jerry, the youngest, had been rescued many times by his older brother's legal expertise. Joseph ran the family construction company, while Louis managed the family's considerable real estate holdings. The Capanos were multi-millionaires and seemed impenetrable. Investigators learned early on that Thomas Capano's family and friends were unlikely to cooperate.
We spoke with an awful lot of people that are very influential that just would not believe that Tom Capano was capable of murder. And were mad at us for investigating him. We're mad that we believed he was, in fact, a murderer. That was frustrating because it was tough to get anybody that was cooperative.
The team believed that if Capano killed Anne-Marie, someone close to him probably helped dispose of the body. But no one was talking. With no body, no DNA sample, no murder weapon, and no cooperation from his cohorts, the federal case against Thomas Capano was weak. On August 6th, Agent Alpert received a call from Sean Taylor, a project manager in Louis Capano's development company. Taylor knew something he believed might interest investigators. He agreed to meet agents and detectives in a secure location, fearing what would happen to him if the Capano brothers found out he was talking to authorities. He described an unusual event that occurred the day after Anne-Marie was reported missing.
Did they give you any reason why they did that?
He advised us he was a project manager at one of the Louis Capano and Associates construction sites. He stated that he was ordered on July 1st, the Monday after Anne-Marie Fahey's disappearance, to have 4 dumpsters on the property pulled and dumped. And he felt that was strange because none of them were full, and it would be very out of character to do that because of the cost of dumping something like that.
This reinforced the investigators' suspicion that Thomas Capano had help disposing of Anne-Marie's body.
2 weeks earlier.
Louis Capano's development company was served with a subpoena for the dumpster records, as investigators began to turn up the heat on the powerful Capano family.
Louis, I need to talk to you. Here, go ahead and take these. Get with Bob.
They hoped one of the brothers would turn against Thomas and tell authorities about Anne-Marie's disappearance.
Your screw-ups are driving me crazy.
The solid bonds between brothers began to strain, but Thomas managed to keep everyone in line.
See you later. Bye.
Under oath, Louis denied that he had ordered the dumpsters emptied. Undaunted, investigators continued to pursue their best lead.
So we traced that dumpster. We went to the hauling company, and we found out exactly when the dumpster had been removed. We found out the dump that it had been brought to, and we went to that dump site.
In the middle of August, an evidence recovery team arrived at the Delaware landfill. Workers pointed out the area where the dumpsters had been emptied. The recovery team searched for anything that could be traced back to Thomas Capano's home.
We were looking for the carpeting, the love seat, possibly a murder weapon, and also possibly Anne-Marie Fahey's body.
For 4 hot, grueling days, FBI agents scoured the landfills. They found nothing. The investigators finally walked away, tired and frustrated. Despite their strong suspicions, they didn't have enough evidence to bring charges. To agents, detectives, and prosecutors, it looked as if Thomas Capano had gotten away with the perfect murder. In August 1996, FBI agents and Delaware authorities continued to pursue evidence against Thomas Capano for the murder of his former mistress, Anne-Marie Fahey. She had been missing for 8 weeks and was presumed murdered by her wealthy ex-lover. As FBI agent Eric Alpert explains, investigators had no physical evidence to support their theory.
There were several challenges in this investigation. We had no murder weapon, no true crime scene, no body, and no witnesses who would come forward and give us information as to what had happened.
On September 6th, investigators received the call they were hoping for. The blood plasma Anne-Marie had donated a month before her disappearance had been recovered just before it reached its European destination.
Sure.
Agents needed a known sample of Anne-Marie's DNA to compare to the unknown sample from the blood spots found in Capano's house. But DNA lab examiner Alan Giusti didn't know if the plasma would be sufficient.
The problem with extracting DNA from plasma is that plasma is the portion of blood that is separated from the blood cells, and the blood cells are what contain the DNA. So when you're working with plasma, you're actually working with a very poor source of DNA.
To his surprise, he found residual red blood cells in the plasma. This enabled Giusti to retrieve a small amount of Anne-Marie's DNA. He compared her DNA sequence to the sequence from the unknown source. They matched. There was only a minute chance that the blood spots from Capano's house did not belong to Anne-Marie Fahey. Investigators now had the first piece of physical evidence they needed to support their suspicion that Thomas Capano had committed murder. They knew they needed more. Capano's cell phone records revealed that he had called a woman named Debbie McIntyre from Stone Harbor, New Jersey on June 28th, the morning after Anne-Marie disappeared. Investigators learned that Debbie McIntyre was yet another one of Capano's mistresses.
We saw that they called each other frequently, but we weren't sure about their relationship. From doing further interviews, we found that Thomas Capano and Debbie McIntyre had been having an affair for approximately 12 years. So at the same time when he was having an affair with Anne-Marie Fahey, he was also having an affair with Debbie McIntyre.
Agents also learned that Jerry Capano, the youngest brother, had owned a boat anchored in Stone Harbor. Detective Robert Donovan investigated.
We found out that Jerry Capano had sold this boat locally. Somebody local had purchased it. We were able to track that down and spoke with a gentleman and looked at his boat.
They scoured the boat for traces of Anne-Marie, but found nothing. The new boat owner told investigators that Jerry Capano had sold the boat without anchors. They suspected that the anchors were now at the bottom of the ocean, wrapped around Anne-Marie's body. Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly and his team turned their attention to Jerry Capano.
And so beginning back in November of '96, we put in place this undercover operation with the idea that we would gather incriminating evidence of Jerry's activities and any other information we could gain about his role on June 28th in disposing of the body.
If agents gathered enough evidence to bring federal charges against Jerry, they could pressure him to talk about his brother's role in the murder. For 11 months, undercover agents tracked Jerry's every move. They learned that he frequented bars and nightclubs and used illegal drugs. They also learned that he collected firearms, a federal crime for a known drug user. On the evening of October 9th, 1997, 15 months after the disappearance of Anne-Marie Fahey, the FBI, assisted by the ATF, raided Jerry Capano's house. He was caught completely by surprise. A friend with a criminal record stood with him in the garage. If agents found illegal narcotics stored in the same house as Jerry's weapons, they'd have the physical evidence needed to leverage his cooperation. They found a small arsenal of guns stored in the bedroom closet of Jerry's 3-year-old son. Agent Alpert searched the laundry room near the kitchen. He dug through the pockets of Jerry's clothes. Jerry's collection of rifles and handguns wasn't illegal per se, unless they found illicit drugs on the premises. Agent Alpert found them. He recovered cocaine and marijuana. Now investigators had what they needed to charge Jerry Capano with felony firearms violations. They could also levy child endangerment charges. They did neither. Prosecutors would offer immunity if Jerry would testify against his brother Thomas.
We did not believe Jerry had any role in the murder of Anne Marie Fahey. We only believed he had a role in the cover-up, the disposal of evidence. And we also knew he was very loyal to his brother. He almost viewed his brother as a father figure. But at the same time, he had a wife, he had children, he had a pretty good life, a life that he probably wouldn't want to give up to go to jail. And that was the card that we had to play.
I mean, they've come through the entire house.
After the raid, the FBI allowed Jerry Capano to consider all that was at stake.
We need to talk now.
He was forced to choose between his brother and his wife and children. The pressure upon Jerry Capano was enormous. Not only was he one of Thomas Capano's closest allies, he was his brother. Investigators weren't certain if Jerry would crack. Even if he did, they had no way of knowing if he could help them bring the powerful Thomas Capano to justice. A year and a half after the disappearance of Anne Marie Fahey, Jerry Capano asked to see the FBI and U.S. Attorney Colm Conley on November 8, 1997. Federal authorities had threatened Jerry Capano with federal firearm charges if he did not cooperate with their investigation. They suspected Jerry had helped his brother Thomas Capano dispose of Anne Marie's body in the Atlantic Ocean. With legal counsel by his side, Jerry related his involvement in the incident. It began months before Anne Marie's June 28th disappearance.
With you personally.
Early in 1996, his brother Thomas came to him with a problem. Jerry told Agent Eric Alpert that he didn't realize Thomas had lied to him.
Well, in February 1996, Thomas Capano went to his brother Jerry and told him that he was being extorted, that somebody was threatening his children. He asked Jerry to get him some cash to help pay the extortionists. He also asked Jerry for a gun and said that he might need Jerry's help someday with the boat to dispose of the extortionist's body.
Jerry provided Thomas with $8,000 and the gun he asked for. Thomas returned the weapon a month later, telling Jerry the money was enough. He didn't need the gun after all. He heard little else about Thomas's problem until Friday, June 29th, 1996.
I got a call from Tom.
Early in the morning, Jerry stepped out of his house to find his older brother parked at the end of the driveway. Thomas looked upset.
6 o'clock in the morning, Tom. What are you doing here?
Jerry, I need your help. Jerry, I need you to get the boat.
I don't want any part of it.
Jerry knew, as soon as Tom asked to use the boat, that Tom had been involved in the killing of somebody. And Jerry said to Tom, "Did you do it?" And his brother said yes. And Jerry said he didn't want to have any part in getting rid of a body, and he refused to give up the boat. He said he had a wife, he had kids, he had a beautiful home. And Tom played the brother card. Tom said, "I have nobody else to turn to. You're my kid brother. Please help me."
I'll meet you at your house.
About an hour?
And finally, Jerry relented. And Jerry agreed to meet Tom and to go to Stone Harbor and to take the boat out and dispose of the body.
Behind closed doors, they met inside Thomas's garage, where he asked Jerry to help him load a heavy cooler into his truck. He never opened the cooler, but Jerry believed the body of Thomas's extortionist was stuffed inside. Only the carpet remained. Jerry told his brother not to take it on the boat because it probably wouldn't sink. When they arrived at Stone Harbor, New Jersey, they carried the cooler down the dock in plain sight. It was a common cooler used by fishermen at the marina, large enough to carry an ample supply of bait. No one would think twice about two men loading the heavy container onto a boat. The brothers fueled up and headed for the open waters of the Atlantic. Thomas Capano ordered his brother to motor 60 miles offshore, where the water was deep enough to hide the body permanently. No one else would be close enough to see what the brothers were about to do. They heaved the cooler into the sea, but Thomas Capano miscalculated. The makeshift coffin floated. Thomas then ordered Jerry to sink the cooler by firing slugs into it. The cooler still floated. The millionaire lawyer retrieved it and decided to sink the corpse without the cooler. His younger brother wanted no part of it. He moved to the front of the boat while Thomas wrapped the boat's anchors around the body. What Jerry Capano saw next was critical for Detective Robert Donovan.
Jerry turns around when he asks Tom, "Are you done? Are you done?" Tom tells him, "Yeah, I'm done." As Jerry turns around to look at Tom, he sees a calf and a foot sinking down.
On their way back to Stone Harbor, Thomas Capano disassembled the cooler and scattered its parts into the ocean.
And Tom said he needed me to come back to the house, that he had something else that I needed to do with him.
The work wasn't finished.
Wrapped it in anchor chains and threw it over.
His brother needed to dispose of more evidence.
Tom says, "I need your help getting rid of this couch." And Jerry sees a stain on the couch, which would be right about shoulder height, which is a large, he described as a basketball-size blood stain.
Well, then do something. Then do something about it if it bothers you.
Investigators believe the stain was caused by a fatal gunshot to Anne Marie's head. They dumped the couch and the carpet into a trash bin at a construction site managed by their brother Louis. Jerry had nothing more to add. When word got out that Jerry had cooperated with investigators, his brother Louis appeared with his lawyer 2 days later.
Conversations for an official record.
Louis Capano recanted his earlier statement and admitted that he had obeyed Thomas's orders to empty the dumpsters earlier than scheduled. The FBI began 24-hour surveillance on Thomas Capano. They believed the suspected murderer might try to kill his brothers to keep them from testifying. Less than a week later, on November 12, 1997, the surveillance team watched Capano and his brother Joseph loading suitcases into their truck. They were heading towards the airport. Agent Alpert feared Thomas was fleeing jurisdiction.
At that point, I paged Colin Conley, the Assistant United States Attorney who was inside the grand jury room, with a 911 page to come out. I told him of the details and said we need to make a decision on what we're going to do.
Investigators felt they still didn't have enough to charge Thomas Capano with kidnapping and murder, but agreed they had to stop him from fleeing. Alpert ordered his arrest on grounds that Capano had obstructed justice by coercing his brothers to give false testimony. 17 months after her disappearance, the suspected killer of Anne Marie Fahey was finally in custody. two brothers now stood against one. But investigators still had no body and no murder weapon. On November 12, 1997, the FBI arrested prominent Delaware lawyer Thomas Capano. He was the prime suspect for the murder of Anne Marie Fahey. His younger brother Jerry claimed Thomas had dumped a corpse into the Atlantic Ocean. Jerry pointed investigators to the area off the New Jersey shore, but they never found Anne Marie's body. Assistant U.S. Attorney Colm Connolly had a daunting task ahead of him.
We didn't have a body, and that's always a problem. There have only been a handful of prosecutions in the country that have been successfully done without a body. And in Delaware, prior to this case, there had only been one case prosecuted without a body, and it had resulted in an acquittal.
The only physical evidence they had against Thomas Capano were two specks of Fahey's blood found in his living room. While investigators prepared the difficult prosecution, Special Agent Eric Alpert learned something that could strengthen their case.
We received a phone call from an individual who said that he had found the cooler floating in the ocean around the weekend of July 4th, 1996. And I asked him to further describe the cooler, and he said that the cooler was missing a lid and had a bullet hole in it.
The lead sounded promising.
I'll have somebody there.
The caller read an article about Capano's arrest that reported a cooler was used in the crime. But the story never mentioned that the lid was missing or that a slug had pierced it. Alpert immediately drove the 2 hours to Bay City, New Jersey to check the lead. On the weekend of July 4th, 1996, Ken Chubb was fishing 6 miles off Indian River when he came across a cooler bobbing in the ocean.
It had 2 bullet holes and blood stain, but you know, we were amazed that this was a brand new cooler, but we weren't amazed at the bullet holes or the blood because they shoot shark a lot, and there might have been a shark flopping around in there and they shot it, and that's where the blood came from.
Yes, sir. There certainly is. In fact, there's 2 of them.
Chubb patched the holes, replaced the lid, and used it as his own until the Capano arrest story broke. Agents discovered the barcode on the cooler matched the one Capano purchased with his credit card on April 22nd, 2 months before Anne Marie disappeared.
The cooler was important in this case because it prevented Tom Capano's defense team pretty much from saying that Jerry Capano was lying. It corroborated exactly what Jerry Capano had told us well before he knew we would ever find this cooler.
The cooler was their second piece of physical evidence, and its purchase demonstrated Capano's premeditation. Investigators still had no murder weapon. They searched records at local gun stores for purchases by Capano or by others close to him. They hit pay dirt. Investigators discovered that Capano's mistress, Debbie McIntyre, had purchased a .22 caliber Beretta on May 13th, 1996, 6 weeks before Fahey disappeared. They brought McIntyre in for questioning. She pretended that her relationship with Thomas Capano was more casual than it actually was.
She spent years in jail.
Connolly asked if Capano owned a gun. McIntyre denied it.
I asked her, "Do you own a gun?" And immediately her demeanor changed. She started blushing. She got very nervous. It was clear that she was lying, and she told us this just fantastical story about buying a gun and then throwing it in the garbage can. And we asked her, did anybody know she had bought that gun? And she said, one person, and it was Tom Capano.
Connolly pointed out that if McIntyre supplied the gun to Capano, she had committed a felony. Under the advice of her attorney, McIntyre admitted that Capano had asked her to buy the gun in the first place. The trial began on October 26, 1998. Early on in the proceedings, Capano surprised the prosecution by admitting that he had disposed of Fahey's body as Jerry had testified. He also admitted to asking his brother Louis to empty the dumpsters early. On the witness stand, Capano painted his own version of events on the evening of June 27, 1996. After dinner, he and Anne-Marie came back to his place. According to Capano, they had resolved their differences. They were enjoying each other's company when Debbie McIntyre burst into his house.
What are you doing? What is this? Staying here with
What
this
are you
woman.
doing in my house?
I'm gonna.
Angry and despondent, McIntyre threatened suicide. Anne-Marie was killed instantly. Despite his legal training, Capano claimed he didn't call police because he was trying to protect McIntyre and himself. Instead, he retrieved the cooler that he said was to be a gift to his brother.
See if I can refresh your memory.
He decided to use it as a coffin.
This is the official document.
During cross-examination, Connolly pointed out that Capano had prosecuted a similar case in 1976 when he served as Assistant Attorney General for Delaware. In that case, the killer dumped his victim into a creek near Delaware City. At the time, Capano was quoted as saying the killer would have gotten away with his crime if he would have dumped the body into the Atlantic. Capano denied this.
Well, it's all here. Can I submit this, Your Honor?
In the state's version of events, Capano forced Anne-Marie Fahey to return to his house. She was determined to end their affair. Capano would not be jilted. He took out the Beretta that McIntyre bought for him and shot Fahey in cold blood. Then he stuffed her into the cooler. At about 9:45 that same evening, he entered Anne-Marie's apartment with fresh groceries and the new pantsuit she would never wear. He carefully tried to cover his tracks as he had planned for months. On January 17, 1999, the jury returned with a verdict.
Mr. Foreman, has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor, we have. Please rise.
Based on his brother's testimony, the blood evidence, and the recovered cooler, the once prominent lawyer and millionaire Thomas Capano was found guilty of first-degree murder.
We were able to reaffirm a lot of people's faith in the judicial system here. The system works. I think we accomplished justice here. I have a very good relationship with the Fahey family, and so I think we've not only been able to bring about justice, but we've brought as much comfort as they can have given the tragedy they had to suffer.
The jury went further, sentencing Capano to the gas chamber. It was the first time in Delaware history that a defendant had been found guilty in a capital crime without a body or a murder weapon. Capano now waits on death row pending appeals.